They always say the devil is in the details. But sometimes, the details are so familiar. They scream at you. I remember the moment I first felt it, not saw it, not heard it, felt it. Like a cold draft slipping through a closed window. Brushing the back of my neck when the house was still. It was late. The kitchen was quiet. She stood by the sink, pretending to wash a plate that had already been rinsed twice. Her eyes weren't there, not in the room, not with me. And when I called her name, she jumped, then smiled too quickly, like she'd rehearsed the expression but missed her cue. That night, I didn't say anything. I just nodded, walked over, kissed her shoulder, and told her I was going to bed. But something inside me had already stood up. Something that had been sitting peacefully for years. I didn't know it yet, but I had already started bracing. For impact. You see, I've lived this story before. Not with her, with the woman before her. My ex-wife, Rachel. Rachel had a way of making me doubt myself without ever raising her voice. She could turn silence into guilt, make absence feel like my fault. And when I finally pieced together the betrayal, it wasn't the infidelity that crushed me, it was the slow erosion of reality. The way I had stopped trusting my own instincts. The way I had let little things go, again, and again, and again. But when I met Claire, I was raw and cautious. I told her everything. My fears, my patterns, my mistakes. I even told her about the late nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had imagined it all, the gaslighting, the withdrawal, the rewriting of history. And Claire. She promised me. She held my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, I would never do to you what your ex did. Funny how that line stuck with me like a needle in fabric, gentle, but always there. I held onto it like a talisman. I believed her. God, I needed to. At first, everything was good. Real. Good. Claire brought a kind of stillness to my life that I hadn't felt in years. We built a life in upstate New York, surrounded by pine trees and quiet roads. She loved wine nights by the fireplace, long Sunday drives, playlists we built together. I thought I was finally safe. I thought I had healed, but safety makes you soft. And love, if you're not careful, can make you blind. It wasn't until that night in the kitchen that something shifted. It wasn't just the way she smiled too fast. It was how quickly she changed the subject when I asked her what she was thinking about. It was how she started leaving her phone face down. More often. It was how our shared playlist stopped being updated. How the Sunday drives became solo errand runs. And how the stillness we once shared turned into a silence that tasted like distance. The words were different. Her language was gentle, measured, reasonable. But the feelings, the texture, was the same. That subtle shame in the air. The confusion. The sense that the ground beneath me was beginning to shift, 1 inch at a time. And maybe the worst part? The part that gutted me was that I didn't tell her. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask. Because a part of me already knew. I just stood in that kitchen, watching her rinse a plate that didn't need cleaning, and thought to myself, it's happening. Again, and just like that. I was back where I swore I'd never be. It's strange, the things we carry from one love into the next. When I first met Claire, I wasn't looking for anything. I was recovering, not just from a divorce, but from the kind of emotional exhaustion that makes you forget what it feels like to laugh without checking who's watching. I had spent 2 years building myself back up after Rachel, slowly, carefully, like stacking matchsticks in the wind. Claire came into my life like a quiet sunrise. She wasn't loud or overly charming. She didn't sweep me off my feet. She just listened. She asked the right questions. Not the kind that dig for gossip, the kind that let you exhale. We met at a bookstore in Ithaca. She was standing in the psychology section, reading the back cover of Attached, and I made some awkward joke about how everyone reads that book after a breakup. She laughed, not a polite laugh, but a real one. That laugh. It stayed with me for weeks. We started slow. Coffee, then dinner. Then long walks around the lake, talking about childhood, fears, the things we wished we could unlearn. And when I told her about Rachel, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her how Rachel had started coming home late and saying she was tired. How? She began forgetting little things I said, then accusing me of being too sensitive when I brought it up. How the intimacy dried up without explanation. And how, in the end, I found out she had been seeing someone from work for 6 months. While still sleeping beside me every night, Claire didn't flinch. She took my hand, looked me in the eyes and said, "That's not love. That's survival dressed up in manipulation. I'm sorry she did that to you." She made it easy to believe in something new. With her, I didn't have to guess. At least not in the beginning. She'd send me voice notes just to say she missed me. She kept every little birthday card I ever gave her. She'd randomly text me quotes about loyalty and say, "This made me think of us." She even told her mother, before I ever met the woman, "He's not like the others. He's solid. He's real." We moved in together a year later. Bought a small place with wood floors and a wraparound porch. I built a garden bed out back. She painted the bedroom walls a soft green that reminded her of childhood summers in Vermont. And for a while, it really felt like we had rewritten the ending. But something about trust, real trust, is that it's not just given. It's loaned. And every tiny betrayal, every little doubt, adds interest. The thing is, I wasn't looking for betrayal. Not at all. In fact, when the first little signs appeared, I was the one defending her, to myself. She's just tired. She's under stress at work. Everyone needs space sometimes. But when I stopped making excuses and started paying attention, I saw it, not in the obvious ways. Claire didn't flirt in front of me. She didn't go out clubbing or dress differently. She just started shrinking away. The way she lingered in the bathroom with her phone. The way she started double-checking where I was before answering a text. The way she laughed a little too hard at someone else's joke when we were out with friends. Most of all, the way she stopped seeing me. You know that feeling? When someone looks at you but doesn't see you. Like you're a familiar painting in a room they pass through, but no longer pause to admire. That's what hit hardest. Not the fear that she was hiding something, but the certainty that she was slowly stepping out of our life, one quiet moment at a time. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet, because I had learned something from the last time. If you ask questions too soon, they lie better. So instead, I waited, and I watched, because the signs weren't just familiar, they were identical. It started with small changes. Things so minor, they almost didn't register, and maybe that's why they hit so hard later. Because love isn't destroyed by explosions. It's eroded by whispers. Claire had this way of being present without really being present. She'd sit beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone, nodding when I spoke, but the nods were on autopilot. Her eyes didn't flicker. Her face didn't shift. It was like she had practiced the art of pretending to listen. I remember one night, I told her about a dream I had, something silly, a memory from college twisted into some surreal nightmare. She laughed at the punchline. Except I never told one. That was the moment I realized she hadn't heard a word. Before Rachel, I might have brushed that off, but now? Now I knew better. Flashback, I saw Rachel through the same lens. 2 years before the divorce, her body in the room but her mind elsewhere. Back then, it was dinners where she barely touched her plate, long showers, late nights with the glow of her screen lighting up the wall long after midnight. And when I'd ask, she'd say, "Don't be paranoid." And I believed her. Until I couldn't anymore. With Claire, the echoes were deafening. Her phone became a shield, always in her hand, always with the screen turned away. The passcode changed. No announcement, no reason. Just changed. She stopped initiating physical affection. If I leaned in to kiss her neck while she was cooking, She'd flinch slightly, a millisecond of hesitation before forcing a smile and saying, "Sorry. I'm just in my head." But I knew that look, that slight tilt of the shoulder, that way of turning her body just enough to make intimacy awkward. I'd seen it before. I felt it before. Flashback. With Rachel, it happened after she started seeing him. She still kissed me goodnight, still said love you in the morning, but there was this hollowness, like the words had been emptied out and filled with obligation. I once tried to surprise her with a weekend away. She told me she had to work. That night, I found a receipt in the trash for 2 movie tickets and dinner, a place we had never gone together. With Claire, it wasn't receipts. It was habits. She started coming home later. Said she was picking up extra shifts, helping her friend Leah with a project. She mentioned this project so often, it started to sound like a cover story. Once, I offered to pick her up after one of those late nights. She paused for a fraction too long before saying, "That's sweet, but Leah's driving me. We're grabbing food after." Except I checked Leah's Instagram later that night. She was in Boston visiting her sister. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I sat with the ache, the growing certainty, and something inside me began to shut down, not from anger, but from grief. Because when you've lived through this before, you don't panic. You don't explode. You just get very quiet. I started documenting things. Notes on my phone. Dates, times, what she said, what I saw. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't building a case to throw in her face. I was building a map. Because if this was going where I thought it was, I wasn't going to let myself get lost in it again. But it's strange how your body reacts before your mind fully catches up. Stopped reaching for her in bed. I stopped texting her during the day. I started watching her the way you watch the weather, waiting for signs, tracking shifts in temperature. And sure enough, the forecast was changing. The woman who once surprised me with sticky notes on the mirror that said "I'm lucky to love you" now left nothing but silence in her wake. And one night late, maybe 1 a.m., I walked past the bathroom and heard her whispering into her phone. She said one word that stopped me in my tracks. "Missed you." She didn't know I was standing there. She didn't know the door was open just an inch. She didn't know that I had already started unraveling the truth. I didn't confront her that night. I stood in the hallway barefoot, the cold of the hardwood floor grounding me, anchoring my breath as the sound of her voice cut through me like glass. "Missed you." Not "I miss you," which might have been vague, might have been friendly, might have belonged to an innocent call. No, past tense. Familiar, intimate, a history baked into 2 words that shouldn't have been whispered behind a door at 1 a.m. I backed away before she opened the door, went downstairs, sat on the couch in the dark with only the hum of the fridge and the slow tick of the antique wall clock for company. My heart didn't race. That's the part people never understand. When betrayal comes the second time, it doesn't thunder, it whispers. It's not fire, it's fog. I think I sat there for 2 hours, not thinking, just feeling. A quiet ache settled in my chest, low and heavy. I knew that ache. I remembered it from years ago. The ache of someone you love becoming a stranger in slow motion. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch until the sky turned pale and the birds began their tired chorus. When Claire came down, she acted like nothing happened. Her smile was the same as always, soft, sleepy, with her hair pulled into a loose bun and my hoodie draped around her shoulders. "You okay?" she asked, voice gentle. "You didn't come to bed." I didn't blink, couldn't sleep. She leaned over the back of the couch, pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Try tonight. I miss you next to me," and it hurt. God. It hurt, because she was lying, and I wasn't ready to destroy us. Not yet. Not without knowing the whole truth. So I responded the only way I could. I began to vanish too. I kept things steady. I laughed when appropriate. I asked about her day. I kissed her goodnight. I gave her nothing to suspect, but I watched. Closely, I started noticing patterns. She got more careful with her phone. Locked screens, notifications hidden, calls taken. Outside for better signal. When she was home, she was present. Too present. Like she was overcorrecting, playing the part of the attentive partner. But the details betrayed her. She'd mention conversations we never had. Laugh at inside jokes I didn't understand. Once, she told me she couldn't wait for Saturday. I hadn't planned anything. When I asked what she meant, she blinked. Didn't you say we were going out to that new place in Kingston? I hadn't. I didn't say a word. Just smiled and said, must have slipped my mind. She looked relieved. That's when I knew she wasn't just being distant. She was mixing up her realities. She was living two lives and starting to lose track of which one she was in when she spoke. So I began to prepare, not for confrontation, not for drama, for understanding, because I had promised myself, if I ever smelled smoke again, I wouldn't run toward the fire. I'd study the wind, find the spark, follow the ashes back to their source. The next weekend, Claire said she was visiting her sister in Albany. A quick overnight trip, just the two of them. She's going through a lot, Claire said. Needs someone to talk to. I nodded. Of course, take your time. She packed light, kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and left. I waited 15 minutes. Then I opened her laptop. She rarely used it anymore. Mostly kept it for work. But I knew she was sloppy with her cloud sync. And I wasn't wrong. One click, photos, recent uploads, and there it was. A picture from 2 weeks ago. Claire sitting across from a man I didn't recognize at a little Italian place in Cold Spring. The timestamp matched a night she claimed she had dinner with. Leah. There were more photos. Reflections in windows, shadows, a hand on her lower back and a mirror selfie she had tried to crop. A restaurant receipt saved in her downloads folder, 2 entrees, wine, a shared dessert. And then the messages. iCloud had backed them up, not all, just fragments. Pieces of text strings that somehow hadn't cleared in the last sync. Wish you were here last night. Still smells like you. I keep dreaming about your mouth. And finally, don't worry. He's still clueless. I didn't cry. I just closed the laptop. Sat with the silence. Let the truth settle in. I realized this wasn't about Claire. Not really. This was about me. About how I had learned to read red flags as reflections. About how I trusted again, too easily. About how I believed promises because I needed to, not because they were real. But more than that, I realized she wasn't just repeating Rachel's mistakes. She was improving on them, and that terrified me, because it meant she was hiding something bigger. There's a moment, right after betrayal becomes truth, where your instincts split. One part of you wants to scream, throw something, wake her up with the truth, and make her explain every detail, every lie, every touch that didn't belong to you. But the other part, the colder, older part, says, not yet. That part knows the real damage isn't in the act, it's in the deception. And if you expose it too soon, they hide the rest. They erase it, deny it, rewrite it. So I kept playing the part of the man who knew nothing. Claire came back from her sister's trip, glowing. A soft energy around her, that little bounce in her step people get when they've been desired. She kissed me longer than usual, even cooked dinner. Made her famous lemon pasta, the one she only made on special nights. She poured wine, lit candles. She was either guilty or celebrating. Either way, I didn't touch the wine. The next day, I called in sick, waited until she left for work. Then I started digging, not to punish her. To understand how deep this went. I started with our shared credit card. She had her own, but we used mine for groceries, gas, takeout, things that seemed harmless. But buried in the statements were a few oddities. Ubers to and from unfamiliar addresses. Charges at boutique hotels in towns she had no reason to be in. Purchases of cologne I didn't wear. One spa charge labeled couples package. The weight of each line item wasn't in the dollars, it was in the betrayal of routine. In the orchestration. The time she must have spent coordinating this alternate life. And then the photos. One of the hotel names matched a location tag I found on a friend of hers. An old Instagram story, only visible because someone had reposted it in a highlight. Claire, laughing in a robe, glass of champagne in hand. Blurry figure. Beside her, not tagged. Just captioned, weekend reset. A weekend she told me she had a work retreat. I started mapping the lies. Building a timeline. I created a folder on my desktop. Named it Reflections. I didn't want to label it something bitter. I wasn't doing this to hold on to anger. I was doing it to remind myself that everything we think is solid can still be a mirage. One night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., going through her old emails. That's when I found it. A flight confirmation. 3 months ago. To Denver. Not for her. For someone named Marcus H. The ticket had been purchased with our shared airline points. My breath left my body. Not because I knew him, but because she had used me to bring him closer. That was the moment I stopped mourning and started preparing. Ran his name. Reverse searched his email from the flight confirmation. Pulled a LinkedIn, a company bio. Even found an old podcast he'd done. Corporate type, VP of something. Lived in Chicago, divorced. 2 kids. There was a video clip embedded in one of the articles. And when I saw him, the way he moved, spoke, smiled, something inside me turned. Because I realized Claire didn't just fall for someone else. She chose someone who looked like me, talked like me, had the same career path, the same build, even the same damn taste in books. He had a Vonnegut quote in his bio. She wasn't running from me. She was replacing me. Piece by piece. Smile by smile. Until her fantasy was a cleaner, shinier version of our life. Without my history. And that, somehow, was worse than the cheating. She wasn't looking for something new. She was rewriting the story. But now, I held the pen, because I had enough to shatter the mirror. Enough to break the silence on my terms. I didn't plan the confrontation like some revenge fantasy. There were no grand speeches, no screaming matches, no catching her in the act. That's not how real betrayal works. It doesn't explode. It rots. And when it's time to confront it, you do it quietly, like walking into a room filled with smoke. I waited until a Sunday morning. Claire loved Sunday mornings. She'd play her favorite jazz records, light that overpriced candle that smelled like fig and cedar, and make waffles, while humming to herself in her oversized sweater. It was one of the only times I still saw her soft, human, unarmored. Wanted her to be her when I broke it. She was at the stove, flipping waffles, when I set my coffee down and said, "You ever think about how we fall in love with someone's potential?" She turned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "I think sometimes we love the version of them we imagine, not the one in front of us." She smiled faintly. "You're getting philosophical again." I sipped. Maybe, or maybe I'm just finally seeing clearly. Something in her posture stiffened. That's when I pulled out the small envelope I had left under my chair. Slid it across the table. Inside, printed screenshots. Flight confirmations. The spa receipt. A blurred still of her and him from the Instagram story. Not a confrontation. Not evidence to accuse. Just truth, stripped of emotion. She didn't touch it right away. She stared at it like it might bite her. Then she said, "What is this?" I didn't raise my voice. Just something I found while cleaning up my bookmarks. Thought it might look familiar. Her hand hovered above the envelope. She didn't open it. Instead, she whispered, "How long have you known?" "A while." Her eyes finally met mine, and that's when it happened. She didn't defend herself. She didn't deny. She cracked. Her knees buckled slightly as she lowered herself into the chair. The breath left her lungs like she'd been punched. I watched as whatever facade she'd built, this careful, curated, double life, collapsed around her, right there at our breakfast table. I didn't mean for it to get this far. She said, voice trembling. I nodded. They never do. I was lonely, she said. I don't even know why it started. At first, it was just fun. And then I felt needed, important. I felt alive. I finished for her. She looked stunned, because I understood. I didn't forgive. But I understood. I loved you, she said, almost choking on the words. I still do. And I believed her. That was the part that made it all so twisted. She did love me. But some people love like firecrackers, brilliant, loud and brief. And others, they love like soil, quiet, steady, necessary. She wanted both, and in trying to have both, she poisoned the roots. Tears ran down her cheeks. Her mouth trembled. She looked like a child caught in a lie she couldn't untell. Say something, she begged. But I had nothing left to give her. So I asked gently, who are you without the lies, Claire? And she didn't answer, because she didn't know. That's when I stood up, poured my cold coffee down the sink, grabbed my keys. As I walked out the door, I heard her sob, not loudly, but the way someone sobs when they realize they've set fire to the only shelter they had. She didn't chase me. She knew it was over. Not just us. The fantasy. The mirror. I didn't move out that day. Not right away. I slept at a friend's for a few nights, cleared my head, breathed air that wasn't laced with her perfume or guilt or echoes of laughter that didn't belong to us anymore. Claire offered to leave, but I told her to stay, at least until I found a new place. I didn't want her version of the story to be, he exploded. He ran. No, I wanted her to see what it looked like when someone walked away with dignity. It's strange, the things you miss when it ends. Not the big stuff, not the trips, the sex, the holidays. You miss the small, mundane nothings. How she'd absent-mindedly rub her thumb in circles on the back of your hand while watching TV. The way she'd leave the cabinet doors open like a hurricane had passed through the kitchen. Her soft hum in the morning, off-key but familiar. You miss those things. And then you don't, because something inside you shifts. It doesn't harden. It realigns. You remember who you were before you shrunk to fit their silence. Before you smiled through your own erasure. Before you mistook loyalty for self-abandonment. I moved into a small place across town. Nothing fancy. A one-bedroom with creaky floors and too much light in the morning. But it was mine. Mine in a way that felt clean. I started running again. Cooked for myself. Took road trips alone, not to escape, but to arrive. Places I used to say we'd visit someday. I went, alone, and it was enough. Claire reached out a few times. Texts, voicemails, one long email I didn't finish. She never begged me back. She just unraveled, quietly, slowly. She tried to explain herself, how she lost herself in the need to be desired, to feel exceptional, to prove something to no one in particular. I never blocked her, but I never replied, because this time, I knew I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking toward myself, and that's the part they don't tell you. That healing doesn't always feel like power. Sometimes it feels like peace. A soft, unremarkable return to the life you forgot you deserved. One night, months later, I found a note tucked into one of my old books. Claire's handwriting, faded. Ink. It said, "You said you'd never survive another heartbreak like Rachel, but you did. You became the man I wasn't ready for. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Thank you for not losing yourself to keep me." I read it once, then I burned it, not out of anger, but ceremony, because some stories don't need rereading. They just need to end. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Click the video on the screen and I'll see you there.